One of the things that we've seen a lot is that the high growth markets, Latin America, Africa, Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, etc., are still massively underserved. I've been speaking to people before. I've had meetings and chats, at the bar, at events, whatever, and I've heard people say something along the lines of, "But we offer cards, we offer PayPal. What else do we need?" And that is a really dangerous mindset, in my opinion. It is just a global expansion killer. So many regions of the world, local payment methods are king. Brazil is a great example where Pix, in just a few short years, has obliterated the card market. Likewise, in, say, South Korea, the likes of Kakao Pay and ToSPay and locally branded South Korean cards are far more popular than your Visa and your MasterCard and PayPal. If you're trying to distribute a game globally, and let's be honest, gaming is global. We want players all around the world to love our games. But if you're not reaching out to them and giving them the opportunities to pay and fundamentally support you in a way that's relevant to them, then you're basically just invisible to a huge, huge percentage of the market. Even in mature markets like Europe and North America, we still see kind of alternative payment methods that are really, really establishing new ways for gamers to pay. Account to account is great for studios. It is a lot cheaper, and the fraud doesn't have the same fraud issues as it does with cards, but they don't always get the attention they should. Buy now, pay later in crypto. We have seen, and we've recently done a study that shows that these payment methods actually increase ATV. Customers still make the same number of purchases, but then they have that increased confidence in, I'm going to make these slightly bigger purchases, which is great for them. They get the best experience possible, that diamond rank instead of that gold rank, whatever it might be. But it's also great for the studio because they have that additional revenue and additional ATV coming in as well. Local and alternative payment methods, in my opinion, should not be confined to smaller markets or emerging markets. They shouldn't just be that kind of afterthought. They are a high growth lever everywhere. And that's why I think it is the biggest opportunity and the biggest way to maximize that growth that any studio can really use. So this is something that in gaming, we are still having to learn because direct payments in gaming is still very, very new. And the beautiful thing is that we can take best practices from the likes of fintech and e-commerce. Those guys have spent decades optimizing payment experiences. So it's almost like a level skip to get to the top straight away. The studios that embrace the mentality are providing players with the options that they're used to using instead of the ones that the studio wants will win the majority of the market share. As I mentioned in that first question, things like Pix in Brazil, things like Kakao Pay and ToSPay in Korea, even in Europe, which we think is a very kind of card and wallet focused region, ideal in the Netherlands is like 60-70% of payments in a lot of cases. Having those things that those players are going to prefer will win that market share. Customize the experience, not just regionally, but also for the individual player, showing the offers that you know they are going to react to, showing the most relevant payment methods based on their past history and how much they're spending, helps build that relationship, and it gives the players confidence and trust that they need to fully invest in their gaming experience with you as a studio. I don't think it's so much that we should see it as metrics being underutilized. It's often that maybe the data is not being dissected and drilled into enough. We kind of have a tendency to maybe look at the surface layer, but when we're looking at strategic decision making, we need to be drilling down and really questioning that data. A good example that we had is that card payments in Australia, we work with multiple acquirers, and at a surface level, it appears that 85% of card transactions are successful with the first acquirer, but actually 92% of them are successful with the second acquirer. Now, the obvious conclusion might be, oh, send all Australian traffic to the second acquirer. But that's not necessarily the right thing to do. It could be, for example, in Australia particularly, there are basically 4 banks. There are other very, very small banks, but something like 85, 90% of all Australian customers use one of the big four banks. So it could be that maybe acquirer B is really, really strong with three of those four banks, but the first acquirer is stronger with the other one. So therefore, actually, the right decision is, well, okay, we'll send traffic for this one bank to the first acquirer and the other three to the second. And that's going to maximize across the board the success rates, not kind of sacrificing one for the other three. It could also be looking at the difference between, say, one-off payments and subscriptions. We know with our suite of partners that we work with, certain acquirers have much better performance for what we call merchant-initiated transactions. They're those ones that are started by the merchant as subscriptions, payments where the customer is not present. This might be a small part of the revenue for some studios, but it could be a massive strategic part for others. And it is super sticky revenue, so it's important to get it right. So shifting that to the second acquirer would definitely be the wrong decision. We need to break down this transactional data into individual cohorts. Is that customers that used to use cards and are now using buy now, pay later? If we're looking at, is buy now, pay later resulting in higher spends? That could be what bank they're with. Is it a Visa or MasterCard or something else? But breaking it down into those cohorts and those dimensions to really understand the minutiae of the data means you can optimize to the absolute max. It does require more work. It's not a quick job. We spend hours and hours and hours and days poring over this data, and we love doing it. But the ROI definitely justifies the extra effort. Cool, absolutely. I mean, with the next 12 to 18 months, I'm actually going to look back to start with because we're seeing some interesting similarities in the way things are going in payments and in gaming. So we know in the last year or so, we've had a lot of rulings and laws in the likes of Korea and the States around this separation of payments and platforms. Where in the past a platform like the Apple App Store, Google Play, these distribution platforms basically could say you must use our payments and you must take the hit of the fee, whatever we suggest. We've seen that power starting to shift back towards studios and gamers. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of confusion and a lot of things that need to be ironed out, but that's the way the trend's been going. And we are seeing something very similar in payments with account-to-account payments. In particular, in Europe and the UK, that's open banking. And we often describe some of the other solutions as being open banking-like, but it is accelerating this power shift away from the large card networks and back towards studios and gamers. We're already seeing certain countries where this adoption has massively taken off. So the Netherlands and Brazil are great examples. Pix is an account-to-account, as I mentioned, ideal in the Netherlands, and also to a lesser extent, the likes of Switzerland and Singapore. And we're really excited to see this trend continuing. The challenge has been, and this is the challenge that certainly in the payments industry we're still addressing, is educating consumers on the benefits and making them understand, actually, this is why it's good, not just for studios, but why it's good for the consumers as well, in terms of their confidence, in terms of their less exposure to fraud. You can't lose your card somewhere and suddenly someone can suddenly start using it, those sorts of things. You don't have those risks. And we are seeing progressively more uptake across many countries. Definitely, yes, in the UK, in the EU, but also even in countries such as the United States that have been really fragmented in the past. We're seeing some very leading organizations bringing those banks together. If you'd said to me 5 years ago that someone could bring the banks in the States together, I would have laughed at you, but they're managing to do it, and it's amazing. We're really starting to see some of these capabilities that used to be restricted to cards, things like saved payment methods, paying in installments, those sorts of things, becoming the mainstay of account-to-account payments, which is driving that adoption. And I just see it going from strength to strength, kind of both this year and over the next few years. It's actually really easy to optimize revenue and to maximize it as much as possible. And we refer back to 5 payment levers that directly shape revenue in gaming. We spent a long time identifying these and managing these on a day-to-day basis for the studios that we work with. And we were able to remove a lot of the blind spots in the payment stack. And we've paved the way to boost daily revenue by sometimes 10, 12, or even 15%. The way we categorize them is effective payment routing. So that's something that I talked about before with the Australia example. The use of local payment methods, again, really making the most of those high growth areas and regions. through the right payment methods. Framing the payment methods to shape spending behavior, that's that personalization that I talked about. The effective use of loyalty programs, and one other. But to discover that and to find how they directly influence your game's revenue generation, you best come along to LSGS in September.